No, I remember them just selling their property in New York City. Someone sent me some files from Kings County, which is the county Brooklyn is located in. And the properties that they sold, they tallied up to over $2 billion. And so from an outward appearance, um, it's a wonderful appearance. The public persona is beautiful. I mean, it's just what it is. Represent the generation of 1914. Now on the cover it says, the generation that will not die. And during my talk, I used to slow down and I would make a statement. I would say, brothers, it is so good to know that I will never grow old and die in this system. Well, they fear these people, but yet their God, will see them from heaven and they have no fear at all. And that's because the fear of Jehovah's Witnesses is really around the leadership. And that's where it is. They basically substitute themselves for God. That's basically the bottom line.
What it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think with the way technology has advanced with social media, with people like yourself, YouTube channels, that bondage is being broken quicker than it was before? Do you think their
Yes.
numbers are dwindling faster than they ever have before?
Yeah. It's a combination of a lot of different things. I think one of the first things is it's important to understand that Jehovah's Witnesses are a time stamp religion. See, when you teach people that the world is going to end soon, or the system is coming to an end, things are wrapping up, you only can tell people that for so long.
Yeah.
And they tire out. They've been telling Jehovah's Witnesses that for almost 150 years. And so people begin to realize y'all don't really know what y'all talking about. Y'all don't really know.
Yeah.
And so a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are simply just tired. We know that because we can look at how many people attend what they call the memorial each year. There's roughly about 9 million Jehovah's Witnesses, but the attendance at the memorial is over 20 million Jehovah's Witnesses.
Really?
And when you know they're Jehovah's Witnesses, because you look at who they are, they're basically old, tired Jehovah's Witnesses, people who grew up as Jehovah's Witnesses, and they simply just stopped going to the Kingdom Hall. These are not people who Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on their door and invited them to come to the memorial. That's not who these people are. These are just old, worn out Jehovah's Witnesses showing up.
Yeah.
And that's what is represented so much now. And it's forced the organization to change a lot of the rules just to keep up. When I was coming along, Jehovah's Witnesses had to keep track of time. Many people never understood why a Jehovah's Witness would stay in your house and talk and talk and talk. And I used to tell them, they're on the clock. They're on the clock. Jehovah's Witnesses get to count how many hours they stayed at your house. Yeah. And that's how you get positions. That's how you get status.
Okay. So if you only have like a bunch of 10-minute calls, that goes against you.
Well, at one time, you could not report anything less than an hour.
Really?
And then they got to the point where they said, well, we'll let the old people report 15 minutes. And then because of COVID, the numbers went down so greatly that they did not want to release what the numbers were once COVID was over. So they decided we're going to take the hour requirement completely off. So now Jehovah's Witness has to check a little box that says, I talked to somebody about God this month. The only religion I know on the earth where you have to report how much you talk to somebody about the Lord, Jehovah's Witnesses do. And they use this information to determine whether you can be appointed as ministerial servants, elders, any type of privileges within the congregation. That's how it is determined because of that. The number of hours. That has been the way they've done it for decades. Now they have to do it more on the sly side. They have to do it more on the sly side. But it's like any other company. I tell people, we work for a book publishing company. Now they're moving more into the real estate. But basically been a book publishing company for years. Charles Taze Russell, Rutherford, those guys realize we have a publishing juggernaut and we're going to use it. And when you can move your products by the millions of people and don't pay them,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I mean, the Watchtower is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Now, I remember them just selling their property in New York City. Someone sent me some files from Kings County, which is the county Brooklyn is located in. And it was just a tax deeds. It was just a tax deeds office file. When you sell a property, you put how much it's worth. And the properties that they sold, they tallied up to over $2 billion just in property. And being that they are a church, churches don't pay taxes.
Yeah.
See, if you or I sold our house or we had a little store we sold, we got to pay, we got to pay, taxes on that. They want the taxes on that. But when you're a church, you don't pay taxes. So the Watchtower dropped $2 billion into their coffers.
Wow.
Yeah, $2 billion worth of property. But it's understandable. I mean, Watchtower has some of the best property in New York City. Yeah, because they had all volunteer staff, we were able to maintain the buildings to absolutely pristine. Interestingly, Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law,
Yeah.
his company purchased some of the Watchtower buildings. It was like $300 million worth of buildings they bought.
Okay.
And he did an interview. Actually, it was really a promo, and he talked about how when we buy Watchtower buildings, we generally don't have anything to do to them inside. Everything is ready. It's move in. Just bring your clothes and your pots and pans. Move in, and that's true. If you were to go to the basement of a typical building in New York, you would be scared to death of rats and roaches. And Watchtower buildings, you can eat off the floor. They had brothers who were assigned to go down there and buff the floor. The basement floor, down there where the boiler and everything in the basement, perfectly clean. And people would come visit the headquarters and they would just be so impressed. There were sisters who worked in the cleaning department. And you would come as a tour group. A busload of you come in. Where y'all from? We're from Oklahoma. And they would come in, they would take a tour of all the facilities.
Yeah.
And you may be down in the lobby or in one of the buildings, and you'll see a sister with knee pads on the floor with a toothbrush. A toothbrush.
Wow.
You know how when you get into an elevator, that door slides back?
Yeah.
And you have that little track that's down at the bottom?
Yep.
She would make sure it was clean. So the buildings were very clean. And so from an outward appearance, it's a wonderful appearance. The public persona is beautiful. I mean, it's just what it is. And basically, for the most part, and I try to, whenever we do our challenge, we talk to people about Jehovah's Witnesses, we try to be very clear. There is a big difference between the rank and file Jehovah's Witness, your uncle, your cousin, guy you work with on the job, and the leadership. They are not the same, and they have nothing in common, because a typical Jehovah's Witness has no idea what time of day it is. But those who work directly with the governing body, they're known as their helpers. The governing body themselves, they're fully aware of what is going on. They're fully aware.
So, can you break apart for me, for people that don't know, what is a Bethelite?
Uh, it's a term that's used. They don't want to call it. It's a term that's used to refer to people who work at any of the Watchtower's headquarters.
Okay.
Because what they call it the house of God. And in the Bible, the word Bethel, it means house of God.
Okay.
So when you tell someone that you are a Bethelite, they know that you work at one of the headquarters.
Okay.
Just by default. And it, like I said, it is viewed as if to give you any type of imagination of what it is, think of going to Harvard and Yale in terms of how they are viewed among colleges. And so that is Jehovah's Witnesses' version of that.
Okay. Interesting. So, what were some things that you saw when you were there that did you make you question anything, or did you go, "Hey, that's not how I thought it was supposed to be"?
Well, I definitely saw things I didn't think it was the way it was supposed to be. I think one of the biggest, it's sad, but it's true. One of the biggest things that happens is you see a tremendous amount of drinking.
Oh,
Most guys come to Bethel at 19. Now, at one time in New York City, once you turn 18, you could drink. That was the rule. That was the law in New York for a long time. It's now it's like 21. And so the guys, you come in at 19, well, these guys are coming from Iowa, Mississippi, North Dakota, Nebraska. They come from all over. And now they're free.
yeah.
Because you're in New York, your mama, your daddy, your congregation like mine is back in North Carolina. So when you're moving throughout the city of New York, nobody knows who you are. And I remember I was there probably about a week, and I got invited over to some guy's room, and we was coming over to watch Monday Night Football. And the guy says, there's some beer in there in the bathroom. And so I went in there, and I'm thinking, look, I'm gonna find a cooler.
Yeah.
No, I pulled back the shower curtain, and the whole tub is full of ice with 2 kegs. I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, but they just don't know. And now the kicker is, you don't tell your friends back home where you grew up at. You don't tell them.
Yeah.
And you really don't. I give you a perfect example. When I got accepted, I got my acceptance letter. I met with the elders of my congregation in North Carolina, and they said, JT, you know, we're so proud of you. You're going to represent us up in New York. And I remember one brother said, yeah, brother JT, won't be no need to take no TV and radios and stereos, because you know you're going to be spending probably a lot of time in prayer and research and study.
Not the case.
Yeah, right. I get up there. Oh man, I'll never forget this guy. I got invited to a guy's room. His dad was not a witness. His dad was not a witness. And his dad was involved with the San Diego Chargers, because they would oftentimes, if they would take the jet, and if the jet was in New York, they would have, like, open seats, and his son would fly back, and sometimes he takes some of his buddies with him. And but his mom was with him, but he wasn't. And I remember going over to this guy's room, and I walked in, and it was just a rack of audio equipment. I mean, just lights all the way down.
Yeah.
I got on the phone, called my mom up, and I said, Mama, mail my stereo up, because it was nothing. But see, he's been back in North Carolina. They did not know what it was like.
Yeah.
And so you don't always tell them what goes on, especially when there's things that's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to get talks where we would be told, especially in the summertime when everybody's going on vacation. Summertime, you got conventions all over the country, around the world. And as a Bethelite, you're going to go to one of them. You just have to figure out which one you want to go to.
Yeah.
And they would always remind their brothers, be sure to make sure that you only take back positive things, brothers. We want to uplift the friends. We don't want to depress the friends.
Yeah.
And so when you saw issues with couples swapping and people drunk and all kinds of stuff, you didn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
You wanted to keep that image. That's what you wanted to do.
So, what was your breaking point? Was it a slow progression, or how did things start to change for you? Because you were quite involved.
Yeah, it was change of doctrine.
Yeah.
Change of doctrine. I used to give a speech, or talk as we used to call it,
Yeah.
about the generation of 1914. That was my favorite talk.
Yeah.
My favorite talk.
Yeah.
And what I used to do during the talk, I used to hold up a magazine. It's the May 15th, 1984 Watchtower. If you want to look it up, be sure to look it up. May 15th, 1984 Watchtower. On the front cover are a picture of older people who represent the generation of 1914. And on the cover it says, the generation that will not die. And during my talk, I used to slow down and I would make a statement. I would say, brothers, it is so good to know that I will never grow old and die in this system. Some of you might be saying, how can you be so arrogant to make a statement like that? And I would say, I would hold the magazine up and I would say, because the governing body, under Jehovah's direction and Holy Spirit, they have taught us that this generation will not die out. Well, if you get a chance, look at the magazine.
Yeah.
Online, and every single one of those people on that magazine, they're dead.
Yeah.
They're dead.
They did.
Not one of them is alive today. And so when they changed the teaching on the generation, it threw a loop at me.
Yeah.
And at that point I had to back up and reevaluate. And that's what I started doing. Started reevaluating. They made a change about alternative service, where they used to make Jehovah's Witnesses go to prison get locked up for not serving in the military,
Yeah.
even though they were offered what's known as alternative service, like working at hospitals, working on road crews, doing volunteer work. Witnesses couldn't even do that. Could not even do that. They could not even do that. And I know someone personally who went to jail because of that. And now this man, he's like a broke man because he went to jail for no reason. He was told this is what God wants you to do.
Yeah.
And he went to jail. And that wasn't the worst part. It wasn't the fact that they changed the teaching. Oh no, that was the nice part. They had a follow-up later on where they said, do you feel you suffered needlessly? They actually have an article. Do you feel you suffered needlessly? And they told these men, the reason you went to prison is because your conscience was too strict. Yeah. And so at that point, I told my wife, I said, look, I can't stay.
Yeah.
If you want to go to a hall, if you want to go to the meetings, I'll support you. I said, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay for another 4 years maybe because there's some things I want to get done. And I didn't make it 4 years. I didn't even make it 4 years.
How long did you make it?
Yeah, probably about a year.
Yeah.
And so I just started backing up all my responsibility. Now, because I was an elder in the Bethel, I know how this works. I know what happens when you tell someone this is not the truth. So I said, I'm going to use this knowledge I got about this organization. I'm going to flip it and play it back on them.
Yeah.
And so I just started backing up in all my responsibilities, stopped giving talks. I had assignments in the circuit and the district level, started giving them up. And people and brothers like, man, what's wrong, JT, man? I didn't see you. I was just backing up. And I'll never forget the night I turned in. It's known as the flock book. It's the elder's secret manual.
Yeah.
I remember when I gave it to one of the elders, we were staying in the back, and I said, just want to let you know, I want to step down as being an elder. It's just becoming a little too much. And he's like, well, we can take some of your load. JT, we can take some of your load and give it to the other brothers and help you out. I said, no, it wouldn't be fair. I don't feel it'd be fair to put my load on them. I don't want to do that. And I'm looking at him just like I'm looking at you right now.
Yeah.
And he said, you ain't coming back. He said, you ain't coming back. I've seen brothers like you. You ain't coming back. And I'm looking just like I'm looking right now. I said, I'm coming back, man. I'm coming back. I have not stepped foot in the Kingdom Hall in decades.
Yeah. So sorry, decades or how long has it been?
Decades. It's been decades. Yeah. So we've been out for a while. And so and so he was right. I didn't come back. So I mean, that's just the way it is. That's the way it is. And I feel sorry for him. In fact, it was so funny. My wife and I, we was over in the area where the Kingdom Hall was. We went out to grab something to eat, and we rode by the Kingdom Hall. And I just looked at it and I said, this is so sad, So they're still waiting for the world to come to the end. Still waiting.
Yeah, it is sad, but it's good that there's people like yourself who have so much knowledge and that are sharing it. So your side.
Yeah, my wife and I, we made a decision. In fact, actually, it's my father-in-law. Because we was going back to college. We didn't go to college. We was going back to college, and we was getting on with our lives. We had we was looking to have, we had a beautiful home built, and because we actually moved to another part of Washington D.C. We were starting to get a new, as we tell everybody when you leave, be sure to start cultivating a new clientele of friends.
Yeah.
We did not tell our friends that we were ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. The first thing people want to tell people, every time an ex-Jehovah leave, you want to tell everybody, I'm an ex-Jehovah. Don't do that. We tell people, don't do that.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what experience this person may have had with Jehovah's Witnesses. Let them get to know you. That's what we did. And so our neighbors and everything, and some of my best friends, people we go on vacation with and stuff, they didn't know we was ex-Jehovah's for years. And when we told them, they said, you know what? Something different about it. Just couldn't put my hand. Oh man, so that's been what it's been like. So, but yeah, and so my father-in-law told us, he says, y'all guys, y'all need to share y'all's story.
Yep.
Y'all might be able to help some folks.
Yep.
And so that's kind of how I started. That's kind of how I started.
That's
So
amazing.
my wife, she's the master brain behind all of this, all of this here,
Yeah.
technology and stuff. This is what she does. She's an expert. She's good. I mean, we both were in IT, but this is her baby. We would not get the shows that we do get out. They would not come out if they were not for her.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, she does the editing. She's real good at that. I would have the fonts upside down, but she makes sure the fonts are the right side up. So this is what we do. Um, and over the years, we've gone through many changes. Both of us have lost our mother. We were fortunate to have them out of the organization, which was good. And just different responsibilities. And so now the biggest issue that Jehovah's Witnesses are facing, especially people from my generation, is that we're starting to see our parents grow old. And sad to say, many Jehovah's Witnesses did not prepare for retirement, because you were not taught to go off those things. Remember, this is a time-based organization. It's like milk. Milk spoils.
Yeah.
And so witnesses so if you had a witness, for example, like your parents and so forth, for them and their friends to sit around, Joe, I'm putting aside some investments for retirement. Jehovah's Witnesses could not have those type of conversations. The reason why is because you're talking about 20 or 30 years down the road when you will retire. For a Jehovah's Witness to go around talking about something 20, 30 years down the road, brother, don't you believe the world gonna come to an end soon? And I used to, when we first left, I used to ask people this. I used to do it on purpose. I would say, right before we left, I would ask people, I'd say, Brother Davis, the way things are going right now, man, do you see this system going on for another 5 or 10 years? No, we ain't. Where things are going now, Ronald Reagan, it's crazy. This system ain't gonna go on. I don't think Ronald Reagan gonna get us through there. And so, because that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do. It's exactly what they do.
The brainwashing.
They can see about 5 years out, and then 5 years go by. They adjust. 5 more years, they adjust.
Yeah.
It's we did a video once, and we had an example of a frog. You know how to cook a frog? Yeah, you know how to cook a frog? I'm telling you, this is how you cook a live frog. You put him in a pan of water, and you turn the eye down very, very low. And as the water warms up, the frog adjusts to the temperature. He adjusts to the temperature.
Yeah.
And he will sit there until it boils. And that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do. When they get new light, new teachings, change in teachings, they just adjust to it. They never do the critical thinking and say, wait a minute, how do we call this a teaching of God on Monday and not on 400 doors here in Alexandria, Virginia? And then I'm coming back a week later and telling these same people, we changed that thing we was telling you last week. How did you do that?
Yeah.
And then turn around and say, this is the truth. Raymond Franz, who was one of the governing body who left and wrote a book and told the story. He made a statement in his book, which is so true. Jehovah's Witnesses look at other religions and they say you have false teachings, unscriptural teachings, demonic teachings, teachings of the devil, man-made teachings. Jehovah's Witnesses, we have what's known as present truths. Present truths are truths that we're teaching today. We also have past truths. Those are teachings we taught yesterday. And you know what? We're going to have future truths. And so as their doctrines move along the food chain, along the timeline, it always maintains being called the truth. Past truths, present truths, future truths. It's never called unscriptural.
Yeah.
It's never called that. So it's very sad. It's very sad.
It is sad. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you would like to add?
Yeah. I would encourage anyone who is not one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and you may know Jehovah's Witnesses or they may come to your door. My advice is, because I've come to realize you can't tell people what to do. Everybody make their own decision. That's just life itself. But be sure to ask questions. Ask critical thinking questions. and never allow someone to tell you what you can and cannot read. My wife and I, we have a slogan on our website, and the slogan goes like this: I prefer to have questions I cannot answer. Because people will often come up with, JT, what do you think this scripture means? Or what do you think this is going to happen? What the Bible said? Well, I tell people, I prefer to have questions I can't answer than to have answers I cannot question. And as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, you cannot question the answers that they give. And so, we try to live a simple life. We're basically the same people we always were. We didn't leave the organization and start going out, selling crack and drugs and swinging from chandeliers and partying every weekend. We didn't do that. We're same basic people we've always been. And that's the fear that people have as Jehovah's Witnesses, that they will leave and they'll just go out and just become debauched.
Yeah.
And I have found that people who leave because of doctrines, they generally don't do any of those things. They are sincere. They wanted to know, and the Watchtower wouldn't give them an honest answer. So they realized, I got to go. And that's kind of the way my wife and I, we viewed it as well. So, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting religion, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't think that they will ever go away because they serve a very valuable role.
Yeah.
And that role is they offer people answers to life's most difficult questions, satisfying and comforting answers, in fact. But it's not to be confused with that the answers are true. But
Yeah.
they will give you comforting and satisfying answers to Bible questions. And so, people have to keep in mind. And the Watchtower will be around because there's always someone who will be born tomorrow. And what Watchtower offers is the most powerful thing that people need, and that's hope. And Jehovah's Witnesses will give you hope. The problem is they just won't ever be able to deliver what they promise. And that's what has happened for over almost 150 years now. Almost 150 years. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and
Thank you
speaking
for
the truth.
inviting me. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, it's been very interesting. Yeah, it's been very interesting. As I see more people like yourself take a peek at the Jehovah's Witnesses and see, what are those people doing?
Yeah. What?
And that's typically the response I get when I talk to people. When you tell them things about, because they see the witness at the door. Well, for years, button up, suit and tie,
Yeah.
little kids and everything. Perfect little couple, two kids and husband and wife.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so when you start telling them, well, let's move the curtain back and see what's behind the curtain. I think of Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
When the little dog moved the curtain back, it changed the whole dynamics.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you move the curtain back on Jehovah's Witnesses.